When we try to understand traditional healing models, it is easy to picture the universe, boundless energy, infinite space, and endless natural cycles. But when you look at the physical reality of a patient, you aren't dealing with galaxies. You are dealing with strictly contained, zoomed-in, microscopic structures. For anyone practicing traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, this difference in scale creates a constant daily tension. You are trying to balance sweeping, ancient cosmological theories against the very tangible physical limits of the human body sitting on your treatment table. Traditional macrocosmic theory maps the body using the 5 elements. It asks you to view wood, fire, earth, metal, and water as boundless archetypal forces. In this cosmic view, elements flow endlessly and expansively, just like they do in nature. But scale matters. The human body has physical boundaries. If you take rules meant for infinite cosmic space and apply them to a strictly constrained biological system, the math doesn't add up. You end up chasing symptoms that don't match the textbook, leaving you stuck in diagnostic dead ends. This comparison matrix breaks down exactly where the two models diverge. First, we look at the dimension. The macrocosm is infinite and seasonal, while the nano-cosmic clinical body is finite and functional. Second is behavior. Cosmic elements act independently, but bodily elements are deeply interdependent. They rely on each other for survival. Finally, regulation. While the universe moves to broad rhythms, the body relies entirely on strict local meridian feedback loops. When you misalign these two concepts, the consequences are immediate. You map out a treatment plan based on a cosmic idea, insert the needles, and nothing happens. Practitioners burn out trying to solve the puzzle, while patients are left living with chronic, unresolved symptoms. To get reliable clinical results, you have to let go of the idea that the body is a boundless universe. The biology requires us to treat the body like a compact, mechanically constrained watch. It is easy to see why the macrocosmic model dominates modern wellness marketing. It is philosophically beautiful. Telling a client their energy flows like a limitless river or expands like a deep forest is an accessible, comforting concept to sell. But taking those metaphors literally causes a major clinical mistake known as cosmic projection. This happens when you assume bodily ailments have infinite traits. Practitioners start treating metal as boundless air, or wood as an expansive, unlimited physical force. The outcome is a complete misunderstanding of biological physics. In a finite space, elements cannot act independently. Wood cannot endlessly expand in a closed system, and metal cannot suddenly condense water without a local, pre-existing supply of qi. So you face a direct trade-off. Sticking strictly to the macrocosmic view keeps you perfectly aligned with ancient philosophical texts and broad wellness marketing. But the cost of that philosophical alignment is your clinical diagnostic clarity. Think about how physical boundaries alter physics. If you light a fire in an open field, it spreads. If you light that same intense fire inside a sealed glass lantern, it will quickly consume the available oxygen and choke out. The physical container dictates how the element behaves. To map the body accurately within those constraints, researcher P.V. Badranath proposes a different structural engine entirely, the Nano-Cosmic Clockwork model. The defining rule of the Nano-Cosmic model is that finite space enforces strict interdependence. Every action requires a local resource. Fire in the body cannot burn without local fuel, and metal cannot function without localized qi. They are bound by space, time, and proximity. Because biological elements are physically restricted and cannot flow endlessly, precise diagnosis requires you to map the strict, localized physics that actually restrain them. To apply this clinically, you have to shift your focus to the foundational anatomical unit of this model, the individual meridian. Instead of viewing the liver as just the wood organ and the heart as just the fire organ, the clockwork model changes the input completely. It treats every single meridian as its own self-contained miniature 5-element system. This animated diagram shows exactly how that functions. Rather than seeing the liver meridian as a solid block of wood, we see it as a large outer gear that contains all 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, spinning away inside it as interconnected mechanical components. Inside this specific liver ecosystem, the internal wood gear manages the smooth flow of planning and energy. Right next to it, the fire gear controls rising heat and irritability. Their rotation relies entirely on one another. Then you have the internal earth gear providing blood nourishment, and the water gear anchoring the system's essence. All five must mesh perfectly to keep the primary liver meridian functioning. So let's look at what happens during a micro-dysfunction. A patient presents with a dry liver symptom. If the internal earth gear jams and fails to provide nourishment, the internal wood gear stops turning. Consequently, the entire large liver meridian gear shudders and grinds to a halt. A flawed macrocosmic approach looks at a dry liver and inaccurately blames a distant generic kidney failure, missing the highly specific internal breakdown entirely. Fixing this intricate clockwork requires absolute precision. Harmony is not restored by flooding the body with generic force. It is restored through minute, highly specific adjustments to realign that single jammed gear. This brings us to a major trade-off. The nano-cosmic model demands a massive increase in granular diagnostic effort per patient. You have to map the exact internal ecology of every meridian. But the reward is a drastically higher success rate with targeted acupuncture. Restoring balance in the body depends entirely on identifying and synchronizing the exact misaligned microgear, not on applying broad external power. Once you understand the inner workings of a single meridian, the next level of complexity is accounting for how these distinct clockworks physically interact with each other inside a finite space. Inside the body, this close proximity generates systemic ripple effects. Because these feedback loops are incredibly tight, a mechanical imbalance in one meridian will naturally cascade and disrupt the neighboring systems. You can see that physical connection here. When that large liver gear jams from an internal deficiency, it physically grinds against the adjacent heart gear. That friction causes the heart system to spin erratically, generating entirely new symptoms downstream. This mechanical perspective neatly resolves classic TCM paradoxes. It shows exactly how a patient can experience simultaneous excess and deficiency at the same time. One gear is completely seized up in deficiency, causing the gear directly next to it to spin out of control in excess. It also explains the child insulting the mother paradox. Rather than treating it as vague, rebellious energy, it is simply a mechanical pressure feedback loop. Resistance from a downstream child gear backs up the entire system and forces the upstream mother gear to jam. TCM has historically tied this closed-loop mechanical system directly to the body's natural circadian clock. Local energy distribution is dictated entirely by time. The body is, and always has been, a synchronized, time-bound machine. The trade-off in the clinic is time. Your initial diagnosis phase takes significantly longer because you cannot just treat the loud, downstream symptom. You have to patiently trace that mechanical friction all the way back upstream to locate the true root gear. Doing that rigorous upstream tracing is the only way to prevent the endless, frustrating whack-a-mole symptom management that plagues poor TCM practice. Ultimately, deciding how to approach traditional Chinese medicine comes down to picking the right diagnostic framework for your specific goals as a practitioner, student, or health optimizer. The macrocosmic model absolutely still holds value. If you're focused on teaching broad lifestyle philosophies, seasonal rhythms, or running general wellness marketing, viewing the body as an expansive universe is an inspiring and accessible approach. However, if you are treating real patients with complex, deeply entrenched issues, the nano-cosmic model is a structural necessity. It demands high mental effort, but it provides the exact mechanical logic needed to untangle localized feedback loops. Let's look at this chart plotting diagnostic accuracy against required effort. You can dispense generic advice with low effort, resulting in predictably low accuracy. For serious clinical practice, misapplying the macro model is highly inefficient. Practitioners expend massive mental effort trying to force cosmic concepts onto a constrained human body, resulting in surprisingly low accuracy. But the nano-cosmic model sits right in the high-effort, high-accuracy quadrant. It represents the necessary operational upgrade to achieve consistent diagnostic success. True systemic health isn't built by trying to capture the vast, infinite cosmos. It is achieved by sitting down and meticulously synchronizing the finite, very delicate gears of the human clockwork.